Hello everyone. As part of a class project, I've interviewed 3 people on their experience of being a member of a minority belief system in America. The following are their interviews in their entirety as they share their experiences of being an atheist, a Muslim, and a Hindu, respectively. I hope that from this video we can all learn from each other, so please enjoy the following presentation. I'm Carlos Hidalgo, and this is Phenom Philosophy.
All right. Hello, everyone. We are on part 1 of our interreligious project here. And here I have an undergraduate molecular and cellular biology student from Texas A&M University. Here is Riley Burrow, one of my closest friends. I'm glad to have you here, Riley. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing, Carlos?
I'm doing great, man. So as you know, I'm kind of doing this project here where I'm getting a lot of different perspectives on just people's viewpoints being a minority religion in the United States, as you know, that is mostly Christian. So you've been raised with this belief system in a way. And when did you realize that this was a minority view in America? And what was that realization like?
So, um, I wasn't, growing up atheist is, people will say that they were raised Christian or they were, raised in the Islamic faith or they were raised Hindu. Um, Growing up atheist isn't like that necessarily. You're not really taught anything. You just kind of exist without any real structure for what you believe. But there definitely was a realization because I mean, this is how structureless it was. I actually thought that myself and my family were Christian until, I don't know, maybe the 4th or 5th grade, because I didn't understand any of the differences between the different beliefs. We never went to church. We didn't, talk about God or any faith or anything like that. We definitely were atheist. I just knew so little about anything, and it was so structureless that I just assumed that I was like my peers. And so if you had asked me in like the 1st grade or something, I probably would have said, "Oh, we're Christian," because I really just didn't know. I didn't know what being Christian really meant either. I just knew that they went to church, and I didn't really think about it that much at the time.
Yeah,
The realization was probably in the 4th or 5th grade. I got really interested in astronomy and black holes for a little bit there. Um, and I just kind of started reading a lot about the origin of the universe and came across the Big Bang and things like that. And at that point, a lot of religious arguments start coming into it. So little 4th grade me going through Wikipedia, trying to make sense of the Wikipedia page on the Big Bang and the Wikipedia pages on different worldviews. So that was the realization for me. It was kind of benign, to be fair.
yeah, that's really interesting. And like, we've known each other for a lot of years, and uh, you've always come across as the type to me to always want to know as much as you can, or to really become as knowledgeable as you can in everything that you dip your toes into. And so, what that really comes across is like, you were really wanting to like explore as you kind of dove deeper into that subject. Uh, but I'm sure that other people, that you interacted with, that were Christian, like you said, you had this realization in the 4th or 5th grade. Uh, had others tried to engage with you regarding religion, or were those interactions like mostly hostile or cordial, or how would you describe those?
So I would say that so my grandmother and I didn't, but like I said, I didn't even know at the time what my faith was. It really wasn't important to me when I was young at all. Um, my grandmother would, she's from Iowa, and so we only saw her maybe once or twice a year. But we would drive up there, and she would have us do a little prayer. But I was this big, like I didn't know what we were doing, and it really wasn't a big deal to me at the time. And it never has been a huge issue or anything like that. That's probably the earliest interaction that I had with any kind of faith directly. And then after that, I didn't have an interaction with any meaningful interaction with the faith until maybe junior high. In elementary school, in late elementary school for the Hurst Euless Bedford School District, where we went to primary school, we up through sixth grade was elementary. And in the sixth grade is, I believe, when a lot of youth groups start. So I think that was when I started to really notice that I would have friends talking about that they went to youth group together and that they had these social circles in church. And I was completely unaware of what that was like or how you even went to youth group or what it was. So that was probably the first time that I had a meaningful interaction with it, was understanding that I wasn't a part of that. And then I think from there on, I didn't have any adults, trying to bring me into the faith outside of, my grandmother would make a comment here and there, which wasn't a big deal, still isn't a big deal. The only interactions that I had were with my peers. So I remember in the 7th grade, this would fall into the, I guess, hostile category. I had a peer tell me, she found out that I was an atheist, which, I just kind of dropped casually. I don't remember how it came up, but casually just kind of mentioned it. And she looks me in the eyes and says, you're going to hell, right? And I was a little taken aback, because obviously I don't believe in a hell, but that's a rude thing to say, I think. And so, or at the time, now I know, but at the time I thought that was just a rude thing to say. And so it was a little bit annoying, but I've developed thick skin to that kind of thing over the years. And so that was probably the most affrontive, just straightforward attack that I've ever had. And that was in 6th grade. It was a really long time ago. So
Yeah. And I remember even past that, I think when you and I started eating lunch together, maybe in about 8th grade, we were, for the audience to know, we graduated together. We were in the same grade. And I think in 8th grade, we started like eating lunch together, and you even asked me about like my beliefs, which I remember this distinctly. Like I was Catholic at the time, and you asked me like, well, why do you think that like there's a God? And I said, well, there's a bunch of people, like a lot of the world, most of the world is Christian. Like, like how can they all be wrong? And you were like, a lot of people have been wrong about a lot of things. And I was like, yeah, and that kind of just, so that you weren't pushing me on that, it was just very much an intellectual conversation. And that just kind of sowed the seeds of doubt for me, at least, as I sort of deconverted. And then I remember also some interactions with you, and I think you remember another teammate of ours on the swim team that would have some pretty passionate conversations in the locker room about, the nature of God, and trying to convince you that, like, how could there not be a God, right? Do you have a certain?
Yeah, I think I remember that. I think that was yeah, I think that was Chase, if I'm remembering correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I would say, there were definitely some passionate discussions about it. And I don't know necessarily if they were hostile or benign or casual. They were definitely intense at times, but I really never felt necessarily attacked or anything like that. I was fine. And they were impassioned discussions for sure, but it really didn't bother me at all to talk about that kind of thing. I've always found that, upfront discussions about faith and religion are always much more comfortable than, silent judgment about it, kind of not talking about it or excluding certain portions of conversation, excluding use from certain portions of conversation or certain practices, have always been much more uncomfortable than just openly discussing the merits of different beliefs or just talking about your beliefs in general, even if you're not trying to persuade anybody about anything.
Right. right. And I think it helped that, we went to the most diverse school in Texas as far as like demographics. And I think that exposure to a lot of different points of view, a lot of different, cultures and religions, just kind of really helped, perhaps our environment and, with these discussions to be more open, and be less hostile, because I think people were generally more understanding of each other when we were in high school, at least, which is, a very critical point when people are really developing their own views and, and sense of self and, religious views. Did you notice a lot of friction between other people of different faiths, like either in high school or since high school?
Not ever directly, to be honest. You hear and see on social media, especially, I would say when we were in junior high, there was plenty of Islamophobia in America, and I'm not saying that that's gone away, but I think that that was kind of very vibrant when we were in junior high. But that's kind of almost abstract because it was stuff that we saw on social media and things like that, or just comments that you would hear. But in terms of you'll also be interviewing Reggie, and Reggie is a close friend of both of ours, and he's Muslim, and I have never seen a direct confrontation with him and people of other faith. There was a fairly significant Islamic population in the International Baccalaureate we were both part of, and I really didn't ever see, people of Christianity and people of the Islamic faith, clashing or anything like that. There were some people that were Hindu, and you never really saw any real battles or anything like that, or even conversations about it. Frankly, it really wasn't something that came up at school. Um, I sparsely remember talking about my being an atheist, or somebody else's being a Christian outside of the very closest friends that you have in high school. So no, I really couldn't say that I ever saw much headbutting, so to speak, in
And
high school.
yeah, and you go to Texas A&M, which is pretty, I would say it's a pretty conservative, campus, especially compared to other campuses. And I'm pretty sure the majority there is Christian, if not evangelical. Have you noticed any sort of friction there at university?
So I would say, from my experience, the so you're right to say that A&M is very Christian. There's a very large Christian population here, but when I think about my friends at A&M that are Christian, they tend to be less conservative than Christian groups that I know outside of the university. That kind of stereotype that university populations tend to be more liberal than your general population still holds true in my experience with the Christian population at A&M. They tend to be more liberal than the general Christian population at large. I definitely did attend church several times at A&M from requests from friends and requests from my significant other and things like that. But still no hostility about it. I definitely wouldn't say that I was ever, confronted, talked about earlier, that one young person in seventh grade that was just so affrontal, you're going to go to hell. I have never seen anything like that from any adult relationship that I've had. Everybody, if they want to talk to me about my beliefs, 9 times out of 10, they want me to become Christian, right? Whatever the reason, whatever the upfront reason might be, understanding me better or something like that. The goal is usually to understand me better so that they can try to bring me around to the faith, right?
Mhm.
And so, with that in mind, I would say that almost every interaction that I've ever had about Christianity with a Christian has been more or less kind when you're talking about it directly. I would say that the negative experiences that I've had with Christianity as an atheist are the exclusionary things and things that they don't say to you, but they say to your friends and to other Christians, right? Maybe excluding you from talking about religion. You know, like I've said, talking about it is fairly comfortable for me. I've always been really comfortable with that, and it's usually a positive experience. But it's when they don't talk to you about it, and they talk amongst themselves about it, that is hurtful or frustrating, or when there are just I'll wrap it up at that. I think.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought.
Yeah, I think that's especially insightful. We in my class on interreligious studies, we talked about how like certain exclusivist views can be really hurtful. Uh, you know, we've seen it throughout history, and we've seen examples of it today. And I think that's definitely something to notice. And I found it really interesting that you say that sometimes it's not always what they say to your face, but it's stuff that goes on perhaps, behind your back, by excluding you or anything like that. And I have one last question, which is, what do you think is the best way to move forward in, this country and our communities, given the diversity of religious views within our population? I know this is a very big question, and there's a lot of answers, but what do you think, in your opinion, would be perhaps a good way, or at least a good start?
Yeah, so I think that one thing is definitely so I think it's important to think about it this way in terms of who, if you've got your non-religious population, you've got your Christian population, what are the dynamics between the groups, and where does the responsibility lie within the two groups? And I'll say this about the non-religious population as a member of it, right? We're not a monolith, and we don't have any structure, right? So we don't ever meet in a centralized location. Therefore, our views about the religious groups tend to be on an individual to individual basis, right? We're not taught what to think about them. We don't have like a large structured meeting. The most organized religious groups out there would be the American Atheist Association or something like that. And I've been an atheist my entire life. I care about my worldview. It's something that I spend plenty of time considering, and I'm not a member. But you would think I would be kind of the target demographic for being a member of that. And I guess that kind of goes to show as like a personal example of how non-organized the non-religious group is. Whereas you look at the religious group, and very highly organized, right? You've got structured leadership, structured organization, structured financials, structured meeting times, all of that stuff. And the other thing is that while within the atheist community, first of all, most atheists aren't a member of the atheist community in the sense that you're seeking out events or you're contributing to conversations or anything like that. The Christian community has a vested interest, especially the evangelical community that is interested in converting people that are of a different faith or of no faith. So the evangelical community actively discusses the atheist community, whereas I would say that only a very small subset of the atheist community that is actually active in it discusses the Christian community. And so I would say that one really good thing would be for the Christian leadership or the religious leadership to really reach out to the atheist community directly, instead of talking about them like they're an enigma, right? Because the best way to find out how an atheist thinks would be to ask an atheist how they think. And I worry that a large portion of the theist community learn how atheists think from theists, right? From the leaders of the church organizations that are telling them, oh, this is how an atheist thinks. And these are the problems with their logic. If you want to convince an atheist to convert, or if you're looking to reach the atheist community at large, or anything like that, the best way to do that is to engage them, right? The best way to do that is to facilitate communication with them and to talk with them in a positive manner, right? So, there are a couple of large groups of Christian communities here in College Station, um, and you hear. I've seen a couple of podcasts, or essentially, web services, where talk about, oh, this is how an atheist thinks, and these are the problems with their logic. Um, and that's all that you hear. And that's really frustrating to hear as an atheist, right? Because this person is talking to their group of people that, in theory, want to reach out to you as an atheist and convince you to become a Christian or to join their faith, right? But then you hear their leaders criticizing the way that you think up at the front of a stage with hundreds, if not thousands, of people listening to them. And that can be really frustrating hearing that. And it would probably be productive to actively engage the atheist community. It is so unheard of that it's hard for me to even picture this. But what if you engaged an atheist during a church session? You invited an atheist to come and talk, and instead of making it a debate about the merits of Christianity or the merits of atheism, just an interview like this, ask them, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? Because if you want the members of your community as a church leader to understand how to talk to an atheist, how to engage with them, how to, start that evangelical process of talking to them about your faith, it's important that you have a realistic understanding of what they think, how they're thinking. And again, I'll point out that atheists are not a monolith. We don't all think the same. So it would be much more useful for a church leader to talk to the people, by the way, that are interested in reaching out to atheists, because that's not what church is like for everybody. But if you were trying to talk to, your group of people that want to reach out to atheists, it is going to be a lot more useful to talk to them about how to engage with an atheist than it is to just criticize, certain arguments that some atheists hold dear and some atheists don't. I think that would be much more productive to really bring atheists in and talk to them and be like, well, what do you, how do you think? Why do you believe this? Why do you believe that? Then it would be, say, this is what you believe and this is why it's wrong, from a distance too. So I think that that's probably the best way to go about it, is to stop saying this is what atheists think and this is why it's wrong, and instead to bring an atheist in and say, what do you think? I think that would be really healthy. And if you have this really strong outlook of your faith, then it shouldn't be threatened by hearing what an atheist thinks or what a Muslim thinks or what a member of the Hindu faith thinks. So that's probably my takeaway, is to start actively engaging the atheist community. And I think one thing that's difficult about that is that there aren't leaders of the atheist community. So you really got to go out there and find people that would be willing to engage with that. And a good place to start is going to usually be, atheist associations at your local college or something like that. Those are going to be young people that are usually freshly interested in the whole worldview idea, and would probably be more than willing to engage with Christians about that conversation, or people of other faiths.
And I think that's great. And I think, perhaps it's a sort of distinction about, instead of talking about each other, talking to each other now, sort of building that
exactly
in transition. So, but I think that's really great, Riley. I think we're out of time for today. I'm definitely going to have you back on Phenom Philosophy to talk about some other topics. I think you have a lot of great things to say and to add, and I think a lot of people need to hear it. So thank you so much, Riley, for coming on. I appreciate you, buddy. and I'll talk to you later.
All right, it was great talking to you, Carlos. Bye.
So my next guest now is an undergraduate student at the University of Texas at Arlington studying biomedical engineering. Here's one of my closest friends, Mr. Reggie Berger. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out to me first about these kind of questions about this interview.
Yeah, dude. You know, we've been friends for so long, and I think definitely religion has come up in a lot of our discussions. And for
Definitely.
people that don't know you, you are a Muslim. You have been your entire life, and you moved to America when you were how old?
When I was 10 years old.
10 years old, and you came from
Mhm.
Austria, correct?
Austria, yep. Austria, specifically Vöcklabruck, which is like the country area of Austria, and that's where I was born and raised.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. And so, when you moved to America, when did you realize that perhaps religiously that you were going to be like a minority? And what was that realization like? So, you know, you came to America, and
Mhm.
obviously, you know right off the bat you're different, right?
Yeah, definitely. Um, I mean, coming to America was there were a lot of stereotypes I was getting um, from school whenever I was moving. They had a little farewell party for me, and I just came on over. And I'm gonna be honest, I expected a lot of cowboys, a lot of pro-Christian stuff, like a bunch of the Western movies I saw whenever I was growing up. But whenever I came here, I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't as bad as I expected compared to European um, Catholic society. Austria, whenever I was growing up, was very pro-Catholic. You could ask anybody around the street. Almost everybody was Catholic. You had a couple of Muslims here and very few atheists around. So coming over here and seeing a mosque I don't know, every 20 miles was amazing. There was only 1 mile in like I believe it was 100 miles um, of where I was growing up. So going to the mosque, having a Muslim community in Austria is a lot harder to have than here in the United States. So I really do appreciate that. I think that's really nice. But the minority aspect, I didn't, I did feel it. I going around, there were a lot of, especially here in Texas, there are a lot of Hispanics and a lot of Americans. And the preferred religion, or the religion that most people have, is obviously Christianity, and then a huge rise in atheism here in America, something that I did not see in Europe or whenever I visited my family in the Middle East. So coming over here, it was different, but it was nice. There were a lot of perks. Um, I was easier to find a community in total, but
Did you
you
feel
could you could feel it.
did you feel a lot of like diversity when you moved here? I mean, was first of all, when you moved to America, was
Mhm.
the DFW area where you moved to right off the bat?
Yes, we moved to Saginaw, which is a little bit off of not too close to Fort Worth, but still close enough to the airport. And as we know here in the airport, DFW International, there is a whole lot of diversity. Very humid, very, very humid. So yeah, I appreciate the diversity. It was the first time meeting somebody who could speak Spanish or of Hispanic descent. Um, it was the first time I met an African American, obviously. Um, and then I'm gonna be honest, it was very pure white with some Turkish people in Austria when I was growing up. So it was a culture shock for me coming here to America. The diversity was insane, and the different religions you would find left and right was insane as well.
Yeah, and I know that throughout junior high and high school, you and I had
Mhm.
different engagements about about religion, especially with Riley. I just finished interviewing him. So and
Oh.
yeah, so we've had these discussions before, but
Hmm.
maybe do you have like a sort of specific memory of any times that others may have tried to engage you regarding religion, and would you feel like those interactions were mostly like hostile or cordial? Like, how would you describe them?
I mm, During my school life, junior high and high school, it was mostly cordial because everybody was trying to make friends. Obviously, nobody wanted to step on other people's toes, especially religion, because here in America, freedom religion, great, amazing thing. I love it. Um, so yeah, people were cordial, but you can sometimes tell the way they looked at you. They're like, I kind of want to hear about it, but I want to tell you you're wrong straight to your face. And some people did. Riley, if other people get to see him, will definitely will be a very violent outlier. During his junior high years, he's calmed down, thankfully. Considering he has a Muslim as his best man coming springtime.
Yeah, that's right. For the audience to know, Riley is actually getting married in a few months, and Reggie
Hmm.
is the best man at that wedding. And so, like, yeah, Riley obviously, yeah, has toned it down a little bit, been more understanding
Hmm.
as he's gotten older. Because I remember in junior high, like, even though we were all friends, like, we could sort of, really push each other's buttons, kind of, I remember he would get really hostile with you and even other people. Uh,
Oh,
in the
yeah. Thankfully though, he's calmed it down.
oh yeah,
Oh yeah. Um, but outside of school, um, it's I it, I've only had I think two hostile encounters really. It's one of them was Mormons coming to knock on my door. I have a Mormon church close down my street, and they were just trying to spread around. And obviously, they knocked on my door saying, trying to preach and trying to spread awareness for their religion. And then they obviously asked me, "What do you believe in?" I told them Islam, and I don't think they were expecting it because I think they were expecting Christianity, Judaism, something like that. But when they heard Islam, their demeanor kind of changed, um, a little bit more hostile, a little bit more aggressive in their preaching um, about their faith, and it became less about them telling me what they wanted me to believe in more of they wanted to know what I believed in to tell me how different and how wrong that kind of was. Our views on women, man, I really hope that doesn't get recorded. Our views on women differ, our views on marriage differ, our views on dating, stuff like that, differ, and they kind of like probed me for it. A complete stranger just probing me for all of this stuff, and I believe after 5 minutes of that hostile behavior, I just told them, um, "Thank you guys for coming over. I think I'm not interested, but thank you so much." And I just closed the door on them, and I just heard them talking outside my door for like a good 3 minutes before walking away. It's kind of strange. But otherwise, honestly, Texas hospitality is a thing, and I appreciate it. It's great.
yeah,
It's mostly been cordial. It's mostly been really, really nice.
yeah. And I think especially given like the area we live in, like you said, it's very
Hmm.
diverse. I mentioned with Riley that we went to a very very diverse high school. I think
Oh
both
yeah.
in Texas. So like everyone sort of had their little pocket or several different pockets that they fit in. Either culturally, religiously, whatever it may be.
Hmm.
Now, do you think that you've noticed a lot of like friction between people of different faiths? I mean, obviously you had that encounter uh,
Hmm.
with the Mormon missionaries, and I know sometimes those like sort of evangelical approaches tend to sometimes cause some friction. But have you noticed anything other than that encounter?
Um, if I would say me personally, no. I've gone to mosques. I've gone to Catholic churches here in the United States. I've gone to Baptist churches here in the United States. I've went to a synagogue. Um, and at places of worship, it is very tame. It's very nice. Everybody's very respectful because I think everybody's just looking at it as, this is a place of prayer, this is a house of God, no matter what religion, or not God if you don't believe in God, but a house of worship. Let's go with that one. But in person, I'm going to be honest, I have not seen that much conflict, tension, strife. But then I turn on the news, as we all know, and the news, I believe, exaggerates it. Obviously, there are a few individuals who are terroristic in nature, whether that's Islamic, Christian, Judaism, whatever their um, choice of faith is. And the media will latch onto that and then keep that story going for a very, very long time and escalate a problem more than it might be. I would like to give an example, but nothing's coming to my mind right now. I do apologize. But yeah, in person, especially our area, like you said, like I've said, DFW, very nice, very accepting. It's great. I can't really speak for, man, I'm trying to think of like a really Christian state.
Like, I mean, anywhere in the Bible Belt, right? So like Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, right?
Yeah, Alabama might be one of them. Where I don't know, man. If you're Muslim and you're just trying to do your thing, and there might be more tension there, but you don't really hear about it. And I think the news really likes to latch on more negative because negative gets clout, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
So the fact that we don't have that much religious strife, we more have celebrity fallouts and stuff like that. I think that speaks to America's tolerance and acceptance of different religions. I really do.
No, that's good. And, I'm glad to hear that, like, that your experience as, minority, religion in America has been, you felt comfortable to be able to, like, practice your religion. And like you said, there's definitely a community, especially because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people in the DFW area. It's a pretty big metroplex. So like that every 20 miles, there's going to be a mosque there.
Yeah,
And,
it's amazing.
yeah. And so given this like diversity of like religious views, not only here, but like, in America, what do you think is the best way to like move forward given like all the diversity, like a good way to like foster understanding?
I think something that I was raised with, because in Austria, there are, for every one mosque, you could probably find 70, I'm not kidding you on this, 70 churches before you'll find another mosque.
I believe it.
So growing up, we went inside of churches and we prayed in churches. Obviously, we didn't do the entire formal up-down process, as I would like to call it. But we did pray to God in there because at the end of the day, it is a house of worship. So I think a good way to move forward is making I don't want to say church, a place of worship, which anybody of any religion, like it isn't assigned to Islam, it isn't assigned to Christians, it isn't assigned to Jews, or Buddhist or Hindu, any of those faiths, and where people can just go in there, pray the way they want to pray next to people of different faiths. I think that would be a huge, huge step forward. Obviously, I can dream, and it would be great, but nothing's going to happen during this pandemic. Sadly, finally, after God knows how many months, the Colleyville Mosque is finally opening up prayer. We haven't been able to go to a mosque in a very long time, so I don't know. I've missed it. I've missed going to a mosque or even to a church and just connecting with God and connecting with the people that are there, because everybody's there to ask for forgiveness. They're all in a very humble mood, a very giving mood, a very kind mood. So I've missed that during this pandemic, during these last couple of months, and I hope that moving forward, a communal place of worship is going to be a thing.
For sure. And one thing that when I asked Riley the same question, we sort of came down to this very brief like distinction, which was like sort of stop talking about each other and start talking to each other. and just, you know, really being exposed to like each other's different views, right? It seems
Mhm.
so like, you know, sometimes, you know, a lot of like hostility just comes out of ignorance, just not being around like, you know, these people of different religious backgrounds. And so I think that
Mhm.
your sort of suggestion of having like a communal worship space is definitely a great way to like to bring people together and accomplish that. Now,
Yeah, and
I think, well, not, I don't mean to interrupt you.
no, no, you're good. You're good. I think I was the one interrupting you. Go
Yeah.
on.
And you know, I think that definitely when you have that communal worship space, I think one thing people are worried about is sometimes like converting people. Like, you know,
Mhm.
they don't want to feel like you're converting. You said you had that experience with the Mormons. Like, you know,
Yeah,
it feels kind of uncomfortable when the other person's like trying to tell you that you're wrong.
exactly.
Like you would agree with that?
Yeah. Um, so going earlier on to your point of view for what Riley said, your other interviewer, that people need to start talking with each other instead of against each other. I would love to see it, and I think that is probably the step that you have to take before making a communal space. Then again, 2020 has not been the year of accepting other people's point of views, to say the least, in my opinion. I think the political spectrum and then just everybody's lashing out against each other religiously, politically, emotionally. Um, we kind of got to move past that stage before we get to the communal um, praying space. But like you said, fear of conversion. Um, as we have right now, there are currently laws, right, where you can't, or signs that say you can't bring a firearm into a school. You can't bring a firearm into um, a place of worship, a church, a mosque.
Yeah,
You can't
certain
do it.
ways.
Yeah, and those are laws. But then again, I can say how it works for I cannot say how it works for synagogues and churches. But for example, in a mosque, um, you are required. It's not a law, but you're required to take off your footwear to make sure you don't dirty the place with your shoes. For example, because people put their heads down on the right.
Correct.
So while that isn't a law which you can get fined with and by the courts and all of that stuff, it is a communal agreement, is what I would like to call it. Everybody agrees on something like that. So I think having a sign like we do for a mosque where it says like, please take off your shoes. If we could have a sign for this communal area saying, you're here for the act of praying. You're here to connect with God and connecting with other people, not here to argue, not here to debate. Or like, please turn off your cell phones. That's
Yeah.
another thing. There you go. Please turn off your cell phones um, during Sunday mass.
Yeah.
That's an example I can go with. So not everybody does it. Obviously, you can still hear somebody's phone ringing here and there all the time. But most of the people, you could say 90% of people will do it and will
Yeah.
respect it. And then peer pressure kind of gets to the other people who don't silence their phones or don't take off their shoes. I think that would be a great thing to have. And then if people get curious, if I get curious about a Christian saying, hey, what are you doing? Or how are you doing your prayer? It looks really interesting. It looks quick. It looks easy. Something like that. Or if a Christian came up to me or a Jew and says, why are you putting your head on the ground? What's the meaning of that? I just wanted to know a little bit more. I feel like it can foster a lot more knowledge and a lot sharing of knowledge and sharing of information, and people would become more accepting of each other when that happens.
Right. Yeah, like you said, you know, it should definitely be for engaging each other in like, you know, discussions and learning about each other, not trying to like, you know,
Prove people wrong.
yeah, prove people wrong,
Mhm.
try to do some sort of debate or intellectual arm wrestling or anything like that.
Mhm.
You know, I think that's a really great suggestion, and I'm interested to hear what our next guest has to say. I'm interviewing Harsh next.
Harsh Patel. Oh
Yeah,
man.
yeah, that's right. So I'm interested to see what he has to say, and yeah, to all of my audience members, yeah. So everybody that I've interviewed so far, we all went to high school together, and
It
so
was great.
yeah, it was great, and we all knew each other. We all loved each other, and we're all of different backgrounds, and I think that really makes us like stronger as like friends and companions and things like that. So I think it's really great. But thank you so much, Reggie, for coming
No
on.
problem.
I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your wisdom. So I'll talk to you later, buddy.
See you later, my guy. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, my last guest is an undergraduate student at the University of Texas at Arlington studying electrical engineering. Here is my high school buddy, Harsh Patel. How you doing, man?
Good to see you, Carlos. I'm doing well.
Yeah, it's good to see you, man. So for those that don't know, Harsh is a Hindu, and he has been his whole life. Now, have you lived in the United States your whole life?
I have. I was actually born here in Irving, Texas. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So you've been a Hindu your whole life, and you were raised with this belief system. And when did you realize that maybe this was like a minority view in America, being a Christian nation, sort of?
When I realized probably when I was in like elementary school or early middle school is like because everyone kept asking me, "You're not Christian? You're not Christian? Or are you Christian?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not." And I guess that's when I started to realize that I guess everyone around me is predominantly that faith. But it hasn't really bothered me ever since because I've been living it out fine.
Yeah, no, that's great. And have other people like try to engage with you regarding religion, like maybe try to like convert you in any way? Oh, did you hear me?
You were cutting in and out there
Okay,
for a
sorry.
second.
Sorry about that. I asked, so have others like try to engage with you about religion, like maybe try to convert you?
Not that I know of. They've been asking me questions about my religion. Like, aren't you like a multi belief system, as in you believe in many gods? And I get that question a lot. But we're not actually believe in many gods. It's actually just one God, but that God has many forms, is what I'd say.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
yeah, nothing that would try to convert me over. Not really.
yeah, and I see how that can be like confusing for a lot of people, which is kind of weird because like even like in Christianity, you get this notion of like God being one, but taking
Mm-hmm.
like many forms, right? In the form of like the Father,
Yep.
Son, and Holy Spirit. But Hindus have something perhaps like similar where it's like, yeah, there's one God, but like, takes many different forms. Uh,
Yep.
you know, and would you say that like these engagements that people have had with you about like religion have been like hostile or cordial, or do you have any like examples of any discussions that you've had?
So I've been asked this many times because of my religion. I always have said that I'm a vegetarian, and people have been asking that if you're a vegetarian and you don't believe in, because we don't. The primary reason that we aren't eating meat is because we don't believe in killing animals or killing another soul, because animals have souls as well. And since we believe in reincarnation, I've been asked that, well, if you're a vegetarian, aren't you killing plants as well? And that's the primary question I've been asked. But I always said, no, we aren't killing plants because they reproduce as well and they provide us with the food that we need, just like all other animals in the life cycle. But yeah, nothing really hostile other than that.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's definitely great, especially like the area that we live in. Like DFW is a very diverse area. A lot of people live in the metroplex. And I've also made mention that we went to a really diverse high school, the most
Yeah.
diverse high school in Texas, and I think that was absolutely great for really being able to like engage with each other, talk about our different cultures and
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds and things like that. And really, in high school, I didn't notice much friction um, between like different religions. Have you noticed, either in high school, junior high, or in college, any like friction between people of like different faiths?
Um, no, not primarily that I've noticed. Like in this generation, I'm noticing primarily that we're all trying to cope and live together to work toward a better future. But not really any friction towards religions anymore. It's now all about becoming one to help progress as a nation, in my view.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great, and I think that's really something that should be promoted, everywhere. And I think that sometimes when, bear with me here, like sometimes when your when your worldview is sometimes a little like smaller, and you're not really exposed to a lot of these different views, you
Yep.
tend to think very sort of like inwardly, as far as
Yep.
you almost want to put yourself above like others. But when
Yeah.
you're really exposed to like a lot of these other religions and other backgrounds, you tend to realize just like how big the world is, and perhaps like how small like you are in
Yeah.
comparison. Where
Yep.
now, what do you think would be the best way for like America to like move forward as like a diverse nation of different backgrounds, immigrants within the population?
I guess make the visa time to come here less, but um, other than that, I'd say they're doing pretty fine in regards to letting us practice our religion freely. I go to temple every Sunday. I do my prayer, help out with the community, and we even promote other religions to coming to our events as well, like Holy. You might have heard of my friends that aren't primarily Hindu and are Christian. They come to these events as well, and I guess America's done a pretty good job of letting that happen.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, and freedom of religion is something that like America has really like tried to have from the beginning. But some people have made the argument that like we're starting to stray away from that. That some people are having this notion that we're a Christian country, right? When we're when it makes it very clear that we're not in the in our Constitution. But when you have a court like the Supreme Court, is a lot of people may not recognize this, that 7 out of the 9 justices on the Supreme Court have a Catholic background, and are very like really want the state to the country to be like the government to really be like cool with like religions, cool with churches. And some people fear like, well, when you have the government and churches like coming together, the majority tends to like
Feel oppressed.
it starts to repress like other minorities. And I think that I think that's definitely something we need to be aware of, like moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. I haven't thought about that, but you do make a good point on that.
Yeah, just more diversity and representation.
I guess that would make it fair, since we're trying to become a diverse nation, I think.
Yeah.
So just get a little bit more background. Supreme Court would, I guess, make it more fair, because you'd get different views from different backgrounds.
Right. And Reggie brought up a good suggestion to the question that I posed to you, like the best way to move forward. He said having a united, like sort of like worship space, right? Where we, people aren't trying to debate each other, not trying to like convert each other, but maybe just trying to, worship together and, really just have discussions and learn from each other. Now, do you think that would be like a good idea to have?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I feel like it'd make me learn more. I'm all for it.
Yeah. And you see, you're a very like open-minded guy. I can just sit here and talk to you about what you got going, and
Yeah.
that, and it's really awesome. But I feel like sometimes with the general population, religion is just sort of that subject that's just sort of you don't talk about it.
Yeah, I don't really hear it much. Everyone's just doing their own thing. I guess religion now is just being pushed aside.
Yeah. Do you think it's taking less of a role in like how people like live their lives, or do you think it's just
Oh, definitely. So like, I guess one example is that the generations that are coming up won't necessarily have a good foundation on religion because of the generation nowadays. They're not really practicing it that much, in my view. So I guess it'll have less of an impact on the future. I guess that'll make religion stray away from future generations.
And do you think that, I mean, I think that correlates well with like the data. I think a year or two ago, Pew Research did a survey, and they found that religious nuns are on the rise, and not like the Catholic nuns, that beat you on the hand. I'm talking about like people that say they're not affiliated with any religion, are on the rise. That it's kind of interesting because people that are non-religious, like Riley that I interviewed, and myself as being non-religious, make up about 20% of the population
Wow.
of the United States. Yet, Christians make up over 90% of our, of our government, of our elected officials in Washington. And that doesn't account, obviously that's unbalanced to account for the non-religious Hindus, Muslims, Jews, everything like that. And so I think representation is definitely something we should be looking for, right, in our elected officials.
Yeah, definitely.
Backgrounds. But yeah, man, do you have anything else that you wanted to add in terms of like religion, or anything that you feel like people just really need to understand, either about Hinduism or how we can get along together?
I feel like the way we can get along is a good way is that Reggie proposed, a united prayer space. But also to divert the view that we are all different in a way, because even if we have separate religions, we're all looking up to the sky and saying that God's up there, we're all saying that and we're praying to up above. So I feel like that's a good way to unite if we just put aside that, we're two separate religions and just come together and try to work toward a better future.
Yeah, I think that's definitely great for especially like, a good way for like, the majority Christian population to reach out to like different religions, like, Islam and Hinduism and Judaism.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your insight and wisdom. Thank you so much, Harsh.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. And
Yeah.
for the audience at home, I'm Carlos Hidalgo, and this is Phenom Philosophy.